Patreon Q&A 150. There's going to be spoilers for all of the series I'm going to be talking about, so tread carefully. Boxsteam asks, after reading the last chapter, it seems Saitama inadvertently sacrificed Orochi to summon God. Could this be the catalyst to Blast eventually finding out and attacking Saitama? So I don't think Saitama activated the ritual to summon God. I mean, he could have, but I don't think he did. Now, what I think is going to happen is in the next redraw chapter, we're going to see Orochi still on the altar. You know, he climbed up there after getting punched by Saitama. And maybe it will trigger the ritual to begin, but then God will be like, you're not strong enough. Because like Saitama's punch nerfed him into his deathbed. So I'm assuming he's not as strong as he once was. And then God's like, maybe, but I can give you the ability to become stronger. And then he does some God magic to him, and Orochi turns into the goop that we saw back in chapter 127. And I think that's why they decided to have Orochi be in that form, because it's going to connect back to their eventual redraws and retcons. Because before this, Saitama originally just, defeated Orochi, and we saw the top of his head fall to the bottom, and then 19 chapters later, he just randomly comes back as this, Orochi's heart. And we just assumed, oh, this is just one of Orochi's abilities, I guess. But God giving him this ability not only clears that up, but it also clears up why Psycho saw God in her vision when she initially fused with Orochi to become Sairochi. Because in chapter 132, when Psychos was talking about it, it kind of just happened out of nowhere at that point. We didn't know why that triggered her to see a vision of God. We just assumed that he randomly just chose her at that point in time. But now, with God giving Orochi these powers, it makes sense that she's going to see God once she fuses with Orochi. And another thing that it clears up is what she also says in chapter 132. When she's referring to Orochi's meat root ability, she says, I would use this power to absorb all living creatures through these roots and fuse their spirits into a single entity. And I always thought that was odd because she was kind of implying that ability comes from God, but originally we saw that Orochi had that ability already. So it didn't really make sense that she was referring to this as a power that came from God. But if God does in fact give Orochi these abilities, then that dialogue winds up making more sense. I even think it's very possible that God allowed Sairochi to come to be just so that she could be a potential sacrifice to bring him back, maybe. Scottish Wolf asks, since we know that Rover more so follows the strongest rather than good versus evil, is he going to stay with Saitama for good, or will he eventually turn on him like Black S? So this is a good question, and it kind of seems it's being set up both ways, in my opinion. We see Rover being taken care of the A-class roommates that Saitama has, and overall acting like a good boy, I guess. But then on the other hand, we see Black S doing up something in the background, and he seems to be including Rover into his machinations. So I guess it's 50-50 at this point as to what's going to happen with Rover. Jimmy P asks, where do you go to procure your vast information on animes and manga? So you mean news when, things are coming out, or what's going to happen and whatnot? Twitter and Reddit is your best bet for that kind of information. But if you're talking about information on the actual series, I mainly just get it from reading the pages themselves, and if I really need to, I'll go to the wiki. Samurai asks, do you think Blue will die? I don't think so. I think it's more likely that maybe Blast would die, sacrificing himself against God. I know that's looking way too far into the future, but just for some reason I feel like Blast would succumb to that fate. Mainly because he's a super cool character, and usually those kinds wind up dying, but I think Blue will live and maybe even become an S-class hero in the future. Delamante asks, how do you think the Usman versus Covington 2 fight will go, and who are you rooting for? So I'm rooting for Usman. I've definitely become a fan of his since he's really come into his own in his title reign. But I think the rematch will be similar to the first one, and Usman will win for sure. Maybe a decision this time. First Wolf asks, do you think My Hero will introduce a foreign knockoff version of All Might, similar to how Russia tried to make their own Captain America with Red Guardian? So I guess it's possible that the hero that we see in the front of the silhouetted international heroes could be the Russian All Might, but I don't know. It's really up in the air at this point. I don't think the My Hero Russians would try to make an All Might, going about it in the Nomu sense. If anything, he would have to have a quirk similar to All Might, I suppose, or at least just a superhuman strength. Little Ferrari asks, which version of Saitama versus Orochi do you prefer? So I guess I'm about equal on both of them. I was never too high on the original one anyway. It always kind of felt a little too brief, and slightly anticlimactic to me. So this redraw is fine. I mean, yeah, we're missing out on some more epic moments, but I think it's overall better for the story. I mean, I'm gonna miss seeing Orochi doing the water stream and all the other cool stuff that he does. And also, I'm kind of disappointed that they missed out on this opportunity to possibly show Orochi using Goketsu's moveset. A couple years ago on Murata's stream, somebody suggested to him that maybe this could be a possibility. You know, considering that Orochi is like the martial arts genius and picked up on Garo's water stream instantly. Naturally, that meant that he probably would have did the same thing to Goketsu when he encountered him. And Murata said that that was a good idea and he was going to run it by one, but then I think he said that maybe they weren't going to do it. And I guess they ultimately decided on that since we don't see it. But this new Lovecraftian form is fine, I guess. It's just that maybe it would have been a little better if they included with this new sequence, like, you know, an extended fight scene, and then Orochi goes into the exposition or something like that, maybe. Zapphod B asks, which version of Orochi do you think is more powerful? I personally feel like the old version. So both are kind of like around the same level, I guess. Although the new version of Orochi has the superior feat, in my opinion, with the Gaia cannon. Although maybe it's possible that the old version of Orochi could do that too. Although, you know, we don't know if he could suck up the Earth's core with his tail like the new one does. John H asks, here's the big question, is Ida top 10 level after chapter 321? So by top 10, do you mean in the series with heroes or just within class 1A? Because I think he's definitely top 10 within class 1A, but overall and even just heroes in general, I don't think he's quite top 10 yet, because he was getting a lot of assistance to be able to catch up with Izuku. While that still is pretty impressive, I don't know if he's that strong yet, but within class 1A, he pretty much is. L asks, Murata is very talented, but he's not the creator or mind behind One Punch Man. One is, Murata is just the artist. Yeah, I guess that's just like a common misconception within the community, and it's understandable, especially if you're just like a casual fan. You would naturally think that the artist of the series is, you know, the guy writing it as well. But, you know, sometimes with manga, that's not the case. And with this series, we have artist and writer separated, with one writing it, you know, starting with the original webcomic. He also went on to make Mob Psycho 100 as well. And then we have the artist, Murata, who also drew Ice Shield 21. I honestly don't know if this will ever unanimously be cleared up, at least in the Western fandom. Zackattack asks, Metal Bat just straight up vaporized those 10k Black S while barely being pumped up. Is it just me, or was this way out of his power range? Has he gotten some kind of Zenkai boost? So maybe it's possible he got a Zenkai, but I don't think he did. I think he's just maybe a little bit stronger because one wanted him to be coming into this part of the arc, maybe. But I also don't think the 10k Black S are really that strong. Considering that Black S is like 11 trillion, or at least in the webcomic he was, then 10k doesn't really seem to be all that powerful compared to that figure. So I think this is totally within Metal Bat's power range to accomplish this feat. But that's pretty much it for the video today, guys. I want to thank all of my amazing patrons. Thank you so much for continuing to support me, guys. And if you would like to be in next week's video, simply check out the Patreon. Link is in the description. It's only $5 to get into the video. And also, please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.